October 8th, 1975. It's Wednesday again, and you know what that means. At 2 o'clock, we ride our bicycles out to the Madison baseball field and play till dusk. Andrew brings me an extra mitt, and Peyton brings all the baseballs and 2 bats. Without him, we couldn't even practice for our team at all. Every once in a while, his sister Katie tags along to be our spectator. She's quiet, so she doesn't bother us. She just watches. I don't bring anything because I'm the newest addition to the team. I'm still practicing to get better. But they say I have a good arm, and I'll make a good pitcher one day. We practice until 6:30-ish, because it starts getting dark around there. "It's about time to go," said Andrew. "Yeah, I'm tired," Katie whispered. Peyton grabbed his bike and said, "Yeah, we should head out then. Chris, pick up those extra balls. They make me pick shit up because I'm new." "Get your stuff and let's go," Andrew said. We got on our bikes and started to ride back to Omen Street where we all lived. It wasn't that long of a ride either, just a few blocks. We rode until we turned onto Omen Street. Then Peyton came to a stop. "Hey, Christopher," he said. "Yeah?" I answered. "Have you ever heard of old Mr. Henley?" he asked. Yeah, I think so. He's the old man that lives down at the end of the road, right?" "Yeah. But he has quite the backstory. Do you want to hear it?" he said, with an uncomforting grin. Sure," I said. "Mr. Henley, well, he's been around for a long time. His house is the foundation of all of Madison. He and his wife Claudia really helped with the development of Madison. He was a well-known author, but he retired when he got to his mid-50s. Then him and his wife were just a social old couple that you would see around town. Until, you know." "I know what." "He killed his wife," Peyton said. "Bullshit," Andrew butted in. "Fine," replied Peyton. "She had a heart attack and died about 8 years ago, when he was in his 60s. Then he didn't even go to her funeral. He became a total recluse. You only see him get in his car and leave. But you can spot him through the windows every now and then. The weirdest thing, though, is that he started to write again. You'll see that house over there with the light on upstairs?" Peyton paused and pointed at the house. I looked over where he pointed, at the old house. It had a dull color to it. All the plants had died and the yard consisted of overgrown grass and weeds. Up on the second floor of the darkened house, you could see clearly in the window a room lit up by an old light, the only light coming from the entire house. The walls were stained and spider webs were in the corners of the room. It looked dusty and unused. But right in the middle of everything, you could see the back of a taller man with thin gray hair who was frantically working on something, his hands moving very quickly. "Yeah, I see it," I responded. "Well, he's up there writing now. He doesn't write that often, but when he does, the next day, someone dies. And their deaths are always untraceable." Wow, that's creepy. Thanks, Peyton. Now I won't sleep considering he's my neighbor. But you're full of it, I said. "Anyways, I'm gonna head home and go to bed. I'll see you guys tomorrow." We all departed and went to our houses. I ate dinner and I went to bed. October 9th, 1975. I woke up around 6 o'clock on Thursday. I got dressed, ate, did some cleaning for my parents. Then I headed out to meet Andrew and go to school. Me and Andrew were both freshmen in high school, and Peyton was a junior. So we didn't even talk to him at school, his so-called social position. Sometimes he was a total ass. So I drooled through 6 classes until I was set free from school. Andrew and I headed back to my house. We parked our bikes out in the yard and we ran inside. My parents were sitting on the couch. My mother was in tears and my father was holding her. "What's the matter, Dad?" I asked. He stood up and walked into the kitchen. "Come here, boys," he commanded. "Your mother's friend Shelby was murdered. They found her downtown in the middle of the road. She was stabbed." I didn't know what to think. Shelby had been a family friend my whole life. I ran out the door with Andrew following. We got on our bikes and we rode straight to Peyton's house. I dropped my bike and ran to the door. I knocked frantically. Peyton answered the door quite quickly. "What do you need, Chris?" he asked. "You were right, Peyton. You were right," I said. "I was right about what?" he said in a totally confused tone. "Mr. Henley, he wrote last night, and my mother's friend, she died," I said. From that day on, we would ride out and check on Mr. Henley's house nightly to see if he was writing. Every Wednesday we would check coming back from practice. After school, before we would go to bed, we would ride out to see if he was writing, but he never was. We decided that it must have been a coincidence. October 19th, 1975. My church had an event where there was food and music, but on our way home, I was in the back seat of the car. We turned onto Omen Street, and we drove past Mr. Henley's house. I looked up at the window, and a light sparked that lit up the whole dark room. And there in the middle of the room was old Mr. Henley writing again. The next day, if someone died, it proved that Mr. Henley is predicting death, or murder, or something. If something happens tomorrow, it proves that Mr. Henley is up to something. I just don't know what. I woke up in the morning, got dressed, ate, headed out for school. School dragged by. I was just so worried that something would happen, and if something did, who, where, why? In fourth block, right after lunch, the bell had just rung for class to start, but Mrs. Foster never showed up for class. We waited for a good 20 minutes, messing around, but then we heard a scream. Half the class pushed out of the room, and we all worked our way down the hallway. A bunch of teachers were surrounding the teachers' lounge. Police showed up shortly after. The cops interviewed all the teachers and some students. School was dismissed after the ambulance showed up to remove the corpse. When I got home, I turned on the television to the news. The news reported about the incident. Edith Foster was found stabbed 16 times in the teacher's lounge. This had to do with Mr. Henley. I'm not positive, but I have a feeling. Investigation went on for days, and nothing showing up. Her case eventually went unsolved with lack of evidence. The three of us would continue to check the house every night until something else occurred. October 28th, 1975. It was 11 at night. I was in bed from a long day. I already checked on the house, and I'd found nothing. Then I hear a faint call of my name. "Christopher." I hear out my window. I ran to the window and saw Peyton. He was motioning me to come down. So I threw on some clothes, a jacket, a pair of shoes, and I headed down the stairs. I came outside. "What do you need, man?" I asked. He was writing. Then he came outside and got in his car and left. He left the door to his house cracked. I think we should break in." "That's crazy," I exclaimed. "But it's the only way we'll ever actually know," he said. "I mean, I guess you're right. Let's go get Andrew." We rode to Andrew's house and threw a small rock up by his window. He rushed down. "Get on your bike, Andrew. We're going to Mr. Henley's house," Peyton said. He got on his bike. His sister came out and wanted to come with us. We told her she couldn't. Then we headed off, straight down Omen Street. We left our bikes out of sight, and we wandered up to the door that was left cracked open. We opened the door and wandered inside. "We need to go up these stairs," Peyton whispered. In front of us was a tall staircase that it would be impressive to see an old man go up. There was an old railing that went up along the stairs that had splinters all up and down it, so we couldn't touch it. The stairs were covered in dust, just like the rest of the house. The only area without dust was a trail of footprints that went in a loop around the house. At the top of the stairs there was a dusty couch and dead flowers, empty picture frames, animal skin rugs, an old taxidermy bear mounted on the wall. The only door open in the whole house was at the top of the stairs, with footsteps going in and out of it. "Must be the room where he'd write," We walked right in and turned on the one light. All there was an empty calendar, a clock, a desk, and an old dusty book on it. The clock read 12:04 after Andrew blew dust off the crystal. "Guys, look," Peyton whispered in excitement. "This has all the evidence, right here." He hands me the book. The book had pages full of dates and stories of death, and when and how they died at Mr. Henley's hand. I turned to the newest page in the book, and it read, "Wednesday, October 8th, 1975. Tomorrow I will stab Shelby Whitman, for she has cheated me too many times. She thinks my house, my fortress, is her cigarette trash can. When she leaves the neighbor's home, when she's going to work tomorrow, I will stab her 26 times, one for each cigarette. Then I will display her body on the road where she belongs." The next entry said, "Sunday, October 19th, 1975. Tomorrow I will end Edith Foster for her remark to my wife at the town hall in 59. She had no reason to open her gross mouth. I've wanted to get around to her, and tomorrow is the day. I know how her schedule works. I'll stab her 16 times, one for each year I've treaded upon this. I'll leave her corpse in a lounge where she spends the majority of her useless time." The final entry, Tuesday, October 28th, 1975. "That's tonight, guys," I said. "Tomorrow, I will set up a game. Take out a few pests. These local boys, Christopher Willis, Peyton Farms, and Andrew Stevens, will die at my hand." "What is this?" I said. "Holy shit, man," Peyton said. "Let's get out of here," Andrew said, trying to leave. "No, what else does it say?" Peyton commanded. "They have been watching me daily, and tonight I see Peyton watching me, and I'll go outside and leave because he's overly curious. He will get his pets and they will wander in my house, where I will slaughter each one of them. Sincerely, Death, boys." "Hello, boys," a voice said from behind us, the lights decimated. Screams echoed throughout the neighborhood. The next day, 3 mutilized teenager corpses were discovered, and no one ever saw Mr. Henley again.